Hello, and thank you for watching this demonstration of APIMS Privacy Management, also known as GDPR compliance, software as a service. APIMS has been specially designed for smaller organizations for one very simple reason. They have exactly the same legal obligations under GDPR as larger organizations, and they face the same cybersecurity threats. Over 50% of UK schools reported cyber attacks last year, as did over a third of SMEs and a quarter of our charities, while the ICO received over 33,000 complaints about organisations failing to comply with GDPR. Yet while large corporations spend years and millions of pounds on privacy programmes for managing compliance, hiring teams of experienced data protection officers, engaging lawyers and consultants, and buying expensive software, smaller organisations simply don't have the money or the access to the specialist knowledge and skills they need. Until now. APIMS is a privacy program in a box for smaller organisations. Applying the same approach as a corporate program, APIMS scales it down and breaks it into manageable chunks, setting tasks and initiating small projects which over time build into a comprehensive compliance program. Essentially, APIMS maps your management structure and your operational activities, whether they're commercial, educational, charitable, whatever, and it assigns roles and responsibilities for compliance to the people who are best placed to manage it. You'll see what I mean when we do a whistle-stop tour through APIMS setup. So let's dive straight in. The program starts with a welcome email to your nominated APIMS administrator, providing a secure link to the APIMS web application where they start by creating their login credentials. They're then taken to a screen where they can confirm their details, and they also have an opportunity at this stage to reassign the APIMS administrator role to somebody else if they wish to. The next question is about ICO registration. The administrator enters your registration number, then APIMS checks the ICO's register and autofills your address and details of your data protection officer if you have registered one. The DPO can also be granted access to APIMS at this point. Next, APIMS asks if you're part of a group and which sector you're in, so you'll be taken to the appropriate version of APIMS. As you see, we'll be demonstrating the education version here. Then we ask if you have a website and if so, how it's used. Now you have an opportunity to customize some of your titles and key terminology. And by the way, you're seeing this particular set of terms because we selected education as the type of organisation on the previous screen. So you can change pupils to students, and for example, if you're a multi-academy trust, you can change governors to trustees. And as you will see here, you can also customize your department names. This is where we start to map your organizational structure, and if you hover your mouse over a department, you can see its pre-installed processes. And of course, you can add new departments if necessary. I'm just going to select one department, and now we just need to enter the details of the heads of department in the accountability framework. Now, while we're here, I just want to take a moment to explain the APIMS accountability framework. The accountability principle on which the whole of the GDPR is based makes organizations, and that of course means their leaders, responsible for ensuring and being able to demonstrate that all their processing activities across the organization are compliant with all of the other 6 privacy principles. Now, the problem that leaders have, of course, is that they generally have very little, if any, visibility or control of what data is being collected and used and shared and stored around their organization. So they can't actually ensure or demonstrate anything, certainly not that everything is compliant. So APIMS makes each head of department accountable to the board for ensuring compliance within their department. Then it delegates responsibility for compliance in each process to the person who actually manages or operates it. APIMS calls these people the process coordinators. Now, obviously, they won't be GDPR experts, so APIMS automatically assesses their process, identifies the applicable legal requirements and any risks, then suggests what actions will be appropriate to ensure compliance. APIMS then tracks completion of those actions and provides management and the board with the automated reporting and record keeping that they need to fulfill their responsibilities and ensure compliance with the accountability principle. Next, the administrator is asked to list the IT systems used by the organization. As you can see, the drop-down works as a handy checklist, and they only need to list the ones they know about, because at this stage, APIMS is just making a start on the inventory and data mapping. Any systems they miss will be added by the heads of department and process coordinators later on in the setup process. Then we do the same thing with third-party services. Again, there is a drop-down to use as a rough checklist, and any services that are missed will be added later on in the setup process. Over time, APIMS will gather more information about these systems and services and the vendors who supply them, and the third-party risk management projects will be initiated, but not now. Next, APIMS asks whether certain types of activity are undertaken anywhere in the organization. Again, the APIMS administrator can simply answer to the best of their knowledge, and it doesn't matter if they make any mistakes, because they will all be corrected later. And that is the end of setup for the APIMS administrator. Obviously, your administrator won't complete it in the 3 minutes it's taken me to demonstrate it, but as you can see, this was not a time-consuming or complicated task. We'll have a proper look at this dashboard later on. Meanwhile, the heads of department have received welcome emails, they've created their logins, they've been asked to start setup for their departments. First, they're presented with a list of IT systems that the APIMS administrator started. They select the ones that are used in their department and add any that are missing. So as this is the pastoral and safeguarding department, we'll add details of the safeguarding system and then click Save and Continue. Then it's the same for third-party services. Obviously, we don't use recruitment or employment benefits here in this department, but we do dispose of confidential waste paper, so we'll select that. Next, the head of department is presented with a list of activities selected by the administrator, so we'll deselect the ones we don't do in this department. And finally, the head of department is asked to select the processes that are undertaken in their department. As you see, there's only one process in pastoral and safeguarding, but most other departments obviously have more. HR, for example, has 10 or 12. They enter the name of the process coordinator for each process, and that is set up complete for the head of department. Again, as you see, it's very quick and simple. They do have a dashboard where information is on a need-to-know basis, so they can only see details of their own departments. So next, it's the turn of the process coordinators to receive welcome emails from APIMS with a brief explanation of the role assigned to them. It has a link to create their login, and they're then taken to a landing page to begin setup of the process or processes assigned to them. Perhaps the most important compliance requirement of the GDPR, the first privacy principle, is that all processing must be lawful, fair and transparent. So to meet this requirement, organizations have to establish a legal basis for each processing activity. Choosing the right legal basis for an activity will usually require specialist knowledge, so APIMS does it for you. Of course, for legal reasons, APIMS can only offer a suggestion, and as you see here, the process coordinator, or perhaps your DPO, can change it if they wish. But if nobody in your organization has that specialist knowledge, and you don't want to incur the costs of legal advice, you can simply confirm your choice of legal basis and continue. Now it's back to the list of IT systems and third-party services. The process coordinator only needs to know what systems and services they use for each process they manage or operate. However, when all the process coordinators have completed setup, you will have an accurate database of all your suppliers and what data they're handling. Now we come to activities. This first screen is about different types and aspects of document handling. It enables APIMS to identify relevant risks and compliance requirements. The process coordinator simply selects the ones that are undertaken as part of this particular process. The second screen is about activities that are identified either in the GDPR or by regulators as potentially posing a high risk to individuals. APIMS uses your answers to determine whether a data protection impact assessment, or DPIA, is required by law or recommended by the ICO. Now we get into the processing details, starting with whose information is involved. The safeguarding process involves information about pupils, staff, parents and guardians, and alleged perpetrators, so these are all pre-selected. Next, APIMS records the specific categories of information that are collected about each type of individual. To save time, we'll just look at the screens for pupils and parents for now. As you'd expect, the safeguarding process involves a wide range of pupil information, and the most common categories and data elements have been pre-selected. The process coordinator reviews the list, and if they're happy it's complete, they can answer no here and continue to the next screen. So here we have the parents' data elements for the process coordinator to review. If any are missing, they simply answer yes to this question here, and it'll take them to this series of comprehensive lists that they can work through to ensure the processing details they're recording are complete and accurate. As you see, this is the user's view of what is in fact a very large and comprehensive database of personal information categories and elements, but it's been displayed in a way that's easy to understand and work through. There's no need for the user to have any GDPR technical or legal knowledge in any part of APIMS. So the updated list of data elements is now displayed for a final check, and in the unlikely event there is still a data element missing, the process coordinator can add it here. Then we record where this information is collected from. Again, the most likely answers have been pre-selected, so the process coordinator can simply review and either correct or confirm the answers. This next screen may seem a little unusual. It displays a series of statements describing different levels of access to information, and the process coordinator is asked to select the statement or statements that most closely describe access to information for their process. The purpose is simply to get a general indication of the level of access controls that are in place currently. APIMS will gather more detailed security information later, but at this stage, this is enough for APIMS to identify whether action is needed urgently or not. And finally, we record any data sharing. That's to say, when you share personal information with another organization for them to use for their own purposes. Again, the most likely answers have been pre-selected, as you see, so it's fairly self-explanatory. And that completes the setup of APIMS. The process coordinator also gets access to a dashboard, and again, they can only see what they need for their role. Now, while we're here, you can see the process coordinator has been set a task because APIMS detected that a data protection impact assessment is required for this process. The start button takes them to the DPIA tool where the processing details have been pre-installed, so they simply have to answer the questions. This is essentially a user-friendly version of the ICO's template. Any risk they identify can be entered here and automatically added to the risk register, which we'll see later. Now we'll go back to the APIMS Administrator's dashboard and we'll start with the GDPR compliance report. APIMS has performed a gap analysis of your GDPR compliance status, and the results are set out here. The executive summary briefly explains the legal obligations of the board or leadership team. Then the report lists the main compliance risks that have been identified based on the information gathered during setup. And for each risk, there is a suggested action to reduce that risk and improve compliance. So your first task is to assign an owner to each risk and a due date for completing the control action. When this has been done for all the risks, the leadership can start using the risk register to track the reduction of your risk exposure as control actions are completed. Meanwhile, the risk owners will have received automated emails notifying them that they have been assigned a task and a link to the risk management tool. Here they can see full details of the risk, the action they are required to take, and the date by which it is to be completed. They use these fields to record details and evidence of the action they've taken and to report their progress, which then shows up on the dashboard reporting wheel. As you can see here, I've assigned all the risks to myself, hence the large number of tasks, but it's handy for the risk owner to see the high-level status and due dates of their assigned risks, while leadership can use the wheel to monitor both risk ratings and control status. Now let's have a look at how incidents and breaches can be logged and tracked through the response procedures to closure. As you see, only essential information is collected, and the drop-downs make the logging process quick and easy, while also enabling common types of incident and patterns of occurrence to be identified so that resources can be directed to the right areas to reduce the overall risk of data breaches. Data subject requests are logged and tracked in a similar way, again keeping time and effort of logging and tracking to a minimum so the focus can be on swift and efficient fulfillment. And finally, the dreaded ROPA, if you've ever tried to create a record of processing activities using an Excel spreadsheet, like everyone had to do in the early days, you can already see that using APIMS is way, way quicker and easier. We only selected one department and one process for this demo, but you can get the idea of what your completed ROPA will look like. And it's also likely to be more accurate and complete because of the way setup is structured, collecting information from the people in your organization who actually manage those departments or operate those processes, so they're in the best place to provide that information. And you'll also have noticed that this has all been done without the need for any specialist GDPR or technical or cybersecurity knowledge whatsoever from any of your users. And that concludes the APIMS demonstration. Thank you for your time.